Again, with your paragraphs instead of prompts. Okay. So again, same question on this matter as well. Like, first off, how early and where's your evidence for that?
Yeah, so
that the early church
the
had
first 3 centuries.
Looked like the Eastern Orthodox
First 3 centuries.
worship. Well, how about the first century? How about the first?
Yeah, sure. The New Testament, sure.
Yeah.
So Revelation 5 through 9.
Do we know what their worship looked like?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because where? How do we know?
Because the early church in the book of Acts has evidences of liturgy.
They wrote it down.
Well, Acts is not describing the entire service itself.
Okay, so then how do you know?
The argument is that it's tradition. Because the New Testament doesn't have a worship service. It shows images of how they worship, but not the actual service. So it's a tradition.
A tradition of what?
Of the liturgy, of how to do it. The apostles set up liturgical worship services in their missionary efforts.
Okay. So you're saying that you know exactly how the first century church conducted their worship service, not
Through
because
tradition.
they wrote it down, because they
it eventually got written
pictures of
down,
it.
but eventually we don't have a first century service, but we have a later. For example, in 150, St. Justin Martyr describes the liturgical worship of the church.
Okay, so it's either described, written down.
It's eventually written down by the 3rd century.
By the 3rd century.
Or I should say we have copies.
The other couple centuries, you don't know. So the only thing we know about the 1st century is...
That's not true. It's not,
to
say
like
we don't know is
said.
not true. No, that's a non sequitur.
Okay, well, how do we know? Demonstrate how we know.
Well, we have attestation and testimony to the type of service, but the earliest actual liturgical record is like in the 200s. But that doesn't mean they didn't have it. It just means we don't have a written version of it.
But we do have some written versions in Acts and in the letters.
No, you don't.
Oh, we don't?
No.
We do. So we don't know the people met together. We don't
service.
know when the apostles gathered and talked about how they should do. When Paul wrote letters instructing the churches on what they ought to be doing.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
When they gathered. So like we have that written down, but you're saying like we don't have a list of how
itself.
But so again, how early are we talking? So maybe 3rd century.
Literally
that
said 3rd
matches.
century, correct?
Yeah, but the earlier church. So if I just say, well, I'm just talking about earlier, so it doesn't match with earlier. It's not the closest because you can't claim that you know how it is.
I don't think you understand the argument. So
okay, well then go ahead and read it again. I mean, we've got time, but
if there's not a liturgical service. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes.
Okay, so there's not a liturgical service in the New Testament.
Yes, Kayla, I know what you mean.
In the New Testament. In the New Testament, we don't have a service. We have descriptions of how they worshiped, not the service itself. Okay? So if they're not worshiping clearly, in your view, then it would have to be tradition, correct?
Say that again?
If there's not a service in the New Testament, a written worship service, then how are they doing it? It has to be by tradition, right?
Well, they give instructions.
No, but the service itself is not there.
The service is not there, but
right.
But what we're told to do. So again, how would you know? How would you know what they're doing or how they're worshiping?
Tradition.
Well, then I have the same thing. I can go by, how it was described.
No, the Protestant church doesn't have a description.
I have a description.
You do not have a liturgical service like the early church.
The Protestant churches today kind of match more with the descriptions of the first century.
No, you don't
sure
have.
they do.
You don't
People meeting together, going around planting churches, evangelizing.
Where's your altar?
Where's
your altar?
That. We have altars. What are you talking about?
For a Eucharistic service? No, you don't.
Yes, we do.
No, Paul says you eat the sacrifice at the altar in Hebrews 13. You don't do that.
What do
Protestantism
you mean?
rejects the idea of a Eucharistic sacrifice.
What are you talking about?
Protestantism, yes, it is. The Protestant church is founded on the Eucharist not being a sacrifice.
What?
The Protestant position rejects the Eucharist as a sacrifice.
Well, Jesus' position on what we ought to do, and the first is as described in the scriptures that we have, is every time you eat the bread and drink the wine, do this in remembrance of me. So we do that.
But that's not a
Eucharistic
Eucharistic
we do. That's what Jesus
sacrifice.
said it should be doing.
Protestant Reformation.
You're just placing,
the church fathers believe in a real presence, and it's a Eucharistic sacrifice.
But I'm talking about what Jesus said. Like, he just left it there. I mean, he kind of left it there.
So it's not the worship service.
Every time you do this, just do it in remembrance.
So you don't
Those were his instructions.
So you reject Paul? So you reject? Do you reject Hebrews 13?
Again, Jesus. You know,
So
I'm going to play.
Jesus-
I'm going
so
to place
Jesus
Jesus's
against Paul?
words about it.
Against Paul?
Well, yeah.
So Jesus fights Paul. Okay.
You know,
So you don't believe in inspiration?
I'm going to say, well, again, if Jesus said it out his own mouth, and then
But you just rejected Paul.
Expanded on it, Paul gave, might have given some sort of like, additional
You're setting
information or
Jesus
whatever.
against
or
Paul.
This is how we remember
So
it.
Jesus wasn't, he didn't
specifically.
inspire Paul?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
just set
that's
them against
what
each
Jesus
other.
said. So you're attaching a whole lot of stuff to what Paul said that I'm not. I'm just saying, Jesus, I'm going to go with what came out of his mouth for the like. So again, if you have some extra stuff you want to put on.
Yeah, the extra stuff is
how the
Hebrews.
Eucharist has to be
Extra
done.
stuff is
We
Hebrews
haven't-
13,
you're
which is-
claiming we don't have altars and that we don't.
You don't have a
participate in the
Eucharistic altar.
Eucharist. That's your opinion. All
No,
I'm
it's
saying
not.
is- All
It's not
I'm
an
saying
opinion.
is, yeah, it is. Because again,
Can you name
I'm
a
just
Protestant
saying-
reformer who believed the Eucharist is a
All
sacrifice?
I'm saying is that we have altars. And
No,
we
you
have
don't.
The Eucharist.
Not
So,
for the
again,
Eucharist. You do not. Protestantism is founded on rejecting the Eucharist as a sacrifice. You don't believe that in the Protestant tradition. That's not true.
No, I'm pretty much going again with what Jesus said about it.
What does that have
So
to do with the
he
Protestant
said-
position rejecting? It's a fact.
Because again, you're attaching a lot of requirements to the Eucharist that Jesus didn't. So again,
So you
that's
actually-
our position, generally speaking,
No,
is
it's
that
not.
whatever Jesus said about it is going to be what we.
The
what
Protestant
is
position
the
also holds
point,
to Hebrews 13, which you rejected.
Again, this, man was
So
not made for the Sabbath, but
if-
Sabbath
if
made
you
for
reject-
man.
if you
The
reject
Eucharist was
Hebrews-
not, we were not made
If you reject
to take
Hebrews,
the Eucharist.
if you
The
reject
Eucharist was
Hebrews,
made
why
for
do you
us.
accept Acts?
So again,
Do you reject Acts too?
No, of course not.
But you reject Hebrews.
No, I'm not.
You just said a minute ago that it doesn't matter what Paul said. I'll go with Jesus.
I didn't say it didn't
Yes,
matter
you did.
what Paul said.
Yes,
I
you
said,
did.
I'm gonna
You
place
said he attached
Jesus-
those other things.
Okay, I take what Jesus says above what Paul says.
That's heresy in the Protestant tradition, even.
No,
So you're not even a Protestant.
it's not
Yes,
heresy.
It is.
Jesus Christ. I'm gonna stick with what he says. If he says,
You
I'm
don't
not
think
saying
he-
that Paul.
you don't think
is
he
in any
inspired
way
Paul?
Contradicting what Jesus
A minute
said.
ago, you
There's
did
no
argue that.
contradiction.
A minute
There
ago,
might
you
be
did.
No.
Then in
no.
Hebrews 13, Paul says we have an altar that we eat from.
Okay. Again, I don't know what
Your
you're claiming.
tradition rejects the
let's go back
Eucharist
to the
as an
problem,
altar
'cause
sacrifice.
again,
Your tradition
no,
rejects that. Yes, it
no,
does.
again,
That's
like,
Protestantism 101.
No, that's just y'all's definition of what an altar
I
is.
used to be
and
a
your
Protestant.
definition of what a Eucharist is, and your
You don't even
definition,
know that
and
Luther's
everybody
one of Luther's
else's
key elements was to reject the
But
Eucharist as a
again,
sacrifice.
Like, when I go at
Can you name a Protestant? Name a Protestant
So
that
what do you
teaches the
mean by
Eucharist as a
altar?
sacrifice.
In what way is it?
So you
do
just
we
wanna
not
argue
have
words.
an altar that? No, again, I'm trying to figure out the concept.
you already
So again,
contradicted Paul
what
and
do
Jesus.
I didn't contradict Jesus.
You contradicted Paul to Jesus.
I didn't contradict Jesus, and I'm saying I'm not I don't know if Paul contradicts Jesus or not. I'm not saying.
Well, a minute
that
ago
he
you
did.
said that he did,
I'm
and
not
now you're saying you don't know.
No, I didn't say he contradicted Jesus.
You said I
he
don't
might
care
have
what Paul
added on.
said. So
When-
if he
as a-
added
okay.
on, would it not be inspired?
Jesus, Paul, church fathers,
Yeah, but
tradition.
that's not.
So again, Jesus is up here. So whatever he says is more important than or more the point, or more the actual point of something than what Paul says. And Paul might expand upon it. That's fine. But again, I'm not sure how this relates to anything about the prompt.
Where
So,
in the New Testament?
I've already forgotten.
Where's the
It's
liturgical service?
100
Where's
years
the
long.
liturgical service in the New Testament?
The liturgical service, I'm not saying that there is one.
Thank you. So it's tradition.
Again, I'm not saying that. That's,
So is it
that's not the
tradition?
point. Again,
That's
to the,
my point.
Back to the main thing.
My point is
back
it's a tradition.
to the main thing. It's closest to the early church. The early church didn't have it either.
Yes, they did.
So
yes, they did.